Hello and welcome to Beyond the Bio. Today's guest is Ivan Hollingsworth, founder of Centric Consultants, a business dedicated to helping individuals and teams thrive through trust, connection and psychological safety. Before launching his own business, Ivan spent more than 16 years in senior roles in the pharmaceutical industry, helping organisations build high-performing teams. Alongside that professional experience sits an extraordinary personal story. His son Seb underwent life-saving open heart surgery as a baby and again as a teenager, giving Ivan a front row seat to resilience, pressure and the power of exceptional teams. Over the last few years, Ivan has become known to many as the Thrive Guy, and he's raised more than £500,000 for charity, chairs the Children's Heart Unit Fund and speaks regularly about resilience, trust and mindset. But here's what's interesting. That isn't necessarily a label that Ivan would have chosen for himself. So in this episode, we're exploring what happens when your personal brand develops around you, how other people sometimes see strengths that we don't recognise in ourselves, and the reality behind being known as the resilient one. Ivan, welcome to Beyond the Bio.
Hi, Sophie. It's lovely to be here.
And let's start with the title of this episode, because I'm calling this episode When Your Personal Brand Chooses You. This is a leading question, do you think that your personal brand chose you?
Yes, I don't think I'd have ever chosen this, if it is the Thrive Guy, as we've called it, or the whole resilience piece. I would never have chosen that. That kind of goes against everything. Even the fact that I'm called the Thrive Guy makes me a bit icky. No, it was, if I'm honest with you, Sophie, it was down to someone else. I can not just it chose me. It felt like it was some sort of moment. One of our dear friends I've known for more than 2 decades, a guy called Pete Cohen, best-selling author, international speaker, was asking me what I was doing with work. And I talked about that and, beyond just the transactional part of work. And he essentially just said, well, you know what you are? No. And he said, you're the Thrive Guy. And it wasn't like it was like the clouds parted and suddenly this big... I didn't know what to do with it. I essentially sat on it for a year because it felt completely, even egotistical, mate. It didn't feel like me to go out and start saying, I'm the Thrive Guy, because it would suggest that I'm thriving or I'm living my best life every day. And I think we've got too many people who are pretending that. So it took a while from Pete saying that to thinking, what does this mean in a way that's aligned to my values and that will help other people?
So how did you get over that ick or that cringe factor and go, right, I'm leaning into it?
I spoke to people I trust. So I spoke to my wife, who is normally the best person to know when to call out and sort of call BS when things aren't aligned. And then Lau, who does all of our PR and marketing and comms, I spoke to her quite soon after and we discussed it a lot. And then we came away with, after that sort of a number of months of going, well, I think this is something we can do to help people to thrive. And so we set up the social media accounts. Even then, though, I did nothing for months. And it was Lau that then held me accountable, telling me every week, she still does it now, where's my video, thinking about what that video is going to be. So she is, I create that kind of accountability process around me to get me where I am now. So it doesn't become too much about me or egotistical or any of that sort of stuff. So it's been a bit of a journey, Sophie.
But you're leaning into it.
Yes.
and it's working. These days you are often associated with words like resilience, thriving, mindset. Were those words that you would have used to describe yourself 10 years ago?
Thriving, no. I think mindset and resilience, yes, but probably through a very narrow lens. I viewed resilience as being about just pushing through, just and part of resilience is when things get tough, pushing through. But I think because of things that happened, challenges I had in my childhood and early adult years, and then with Seb's surgery, I am quite good at finding a way to push through. And so I think others and probably myself as well would have called myself resilient or strong, but probably through a very narrow and sometimes quite damaging lens.
That's interesting. And obviously your son's health journey has shaped so much of your outlook on life. What did those experiences teach you about resilience that people potentially often misunderstand about it?
So I thought resilience was never breaking. And I'm pretty strong. and it was Seb's first surgery. There was a specific moment, Sophie, where, and at the time, the rules that the anaesthetist had set in the operating theatre was only one parent could go in to theatre with Seb as he was put under the anaesthetic. So I was left outside as my wife went in. And without going into all the sort of challenges around the moment there, is that as I sat outside theatre, I completely broke. Which makes complete sense. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't in that situation? You know, you don't know whether or not your child's going to live or die. The problem I had is that I defined and described myself based upon that strength and that resilience. And in that moment, I had neither. And so it essentially said, well, if you don't have them, then you have nothing. And so that point in 2009, without question, is the lowest point of my life. Not just because of what he was going through, obviously, but how in the months and years afterwards, I essentially had to completely rebuild myself because I realised that way I defined resilience, and many people do, is don't break. And I broke.
And what did you do to rebuild?
There's probably a really smooth journey that people write, you know, when people talk about their story, and it always feels like it's just this lovely linear, probably a very messy way. I think there was a number of things that helped without me necessarily knowing. I think our fundraising, I think the community that we built around our fundraising absolutely helped. I think having purpose, having all of those key things that can help you. I think what then also happened was that the significant time I spent on reflecting what actually it means to live a life where you can cope or not, and what that looks like. And so it was months and years of sort of looking within myself, reflecting on things and building myself, which hasn't stopped today.
So is it something you've always got to work at and feed?
100%. I think the term resilient, and I talk to a lot of my clients around this, whether it's in big talks or in one-to-one work with leaders, resilience is not a fixed state. It's not like it's something you have sort of through your trait or your genetics. I think it is something that we are building, and life will throw small challenges to us in those day-to-day moments and big challenges, and it's a fluid, constantly evolving thing. And I think that's what I've learned, and then I support clients with around how we break some certain terms. I get really irritated about how they're used. I think resilience has become weaponized, and to some people toxic, and so I call that out. I think we talk about younger generation. I know you've got a younger daughter, that they lack resilience, or they, first of all, it's evidently it's nonsense. There is nothing that supports that. It also is deeply damaging when we talk about it that way. So I'm on a bit of a mission, I guess, to break that, and some of that is talking about my own journey, or trying to create the space for other people to think about what that looks like for them.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So I guess it is something that you build, and potentially it is something that you are forced to build when you are put in situations that are kind of beyond your control, and you've got those challenges. If you were kind of advising someone on building someone that hasn't experienced any challenges yet, so maybe a young person, I mean, I know they do experience challenges, of course they do, but you know, perhaps they are someone that's very young that so far has, you know, had nothing terrible happen to them. Are you advising them early on what they can do to build resilience for the point where they need it?
Yeah, I think so. I think the younger generation, I think it's tough. I mean, I don't do much work in younger generation. I've done some work in colleges and universities. I think there's a more subtle way in which we can support children around this. But I think schools are better now than they used to be. I think schools talk about things like, my daughter who's 10 knows what box breathing is.
Oh, wow.
It took me till I was in my 40s to know what that was. There's a way of calming your stress response. So I think we are, elements of what we're doing with children is much better. We talk about emotions far more openly.
They have a class. I can't remember what it's called, but I always say, "Oh, have you got the feelings class today, Jess?"
Yeah, and we laugh, don't we? And I think that what's relevant there is that they are becoming far more. Their intelligence, their understanding, and their awareness around emotions is far better than I would have had.
Yeah.
And so I think that is really helpful. I think there are some damaging things in the world, you know, sort of social media, online, and lots of things that mean that we're not gathering communities. We don't build that supportive environment around me. And so I think one of the key things for younger people and older people, Sophie, is that what does our support network look like? Whatever that is in your world, is that for me is crucial. Resilience is one of my mantras. Is resilience is not a solo sport. Okay, and the moment you think it is, you're in bother.
Yeah.
Surrounding yourself with awesome people who know when to give you that hug or to give you the kick up the backside, the people who have your back, is fundamental. I think to living a life where anyone can thrive, and within which you then, how can I cope with difficulty and challenge and adversity? Part of that is about having people around you.
I totally agree. And I think one thing that I notice with where people are assuming that someone is super resilient is that they cope all the time and that they can manage everything really well. Have you ever felt like that's almost a burden, that people are assuming that you can cope with everything so well?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's you sometimes put out into the world something that you want to manifest, right? So I want to be someone who can cope with challenges, but equally, if you put that out into the world, then people think you always cope. They're less likely to offer help and offer support. So I don't use social media to tell the world I'm struggling. You won't see me putting posts on when I'm absolutely broken. Not because that's not appropriate, but because when I'm in those moments, I know who to ring up. I know who to speak to.
Yeah.
I know what to do. But I do, in more of a reflective way, try to share when things have been challenging. Reflecting back on points of my life when people have been there for me, or when I've really, really struggled, of trying to, rather than in the moment of trauma, which I don't think the world needs to see me in my moments of trauma, but perhaps more reflective, being able to say, in that moment, that person, without that person, I don't know how they've got through it. And remembering the different people, the different situations that helped you to navigate, and then almost saying, well, if that helped, then what can I do that means I support other people and I have those people around me? And I've got a few friends that they know the second I say, are you free for a coffee? One of my dearest friends, a guy called Seamus, he'll know in that moment that I need help.
He knows, yeah.
And it's having those people who just intuitively know. That happens because you've invested in the relationship, you've built that connection.
I totally get that. And I think there's something really interesting around that whole not putting it out there in the moment thing, because you do see a lot of people doing that, and actually that's probably really damaging to them in that moment, because they need all these other things that we've just talked about around the support network or whatever helps them to get through it. But also, it's not actually useful to anyone. It's that bit afterwards where you're reflecting and you're saying, right, that was a challenging time. Here's what I did to come through it.
I totally agree. Look, we have all these social media channels, even TikTok, which I'm still yet to understand, but we have all these channels around the Thrive Guy, and you know that the one where I talk about my personal anxiety, and the closer it is to that, the experience I've been through, that gets more views.
Yeah, well.
And so if you're going for the dopamine hit of more clicks and more likes, you could do more of that. That's not how I want to show up in the world. I don't want to show up as having everything nailed, but I think the ability just to reflect back in a calmer state, I think then helps people. If they're in trauma, they don't need to see me in trauma.
Yeah.
If they're struggling, then the ability just to reflect something, I think, can help to ease it. So I won't use social media, and I won't use those platforms as a way of just trying to get clicks by showing it in the moment.
Yeah. So you are using social media to build your brand. What other kinds of activities are working well for you to get you known?
Do you know, I think social media is key, and we've used social media, whether it's through fundraising, through campaigning, and now through what we're doing for the business. And it's great. It's building a community. That for me is more important. I think how my brand is built, for me, is an output of if I can build community and I can add value into the lives of other people, that's how I want to do it. So a lot of the work I do is actually not through the lens of the Thrive Guy. It's going out there, coaching senior leaders, working with organisations, and building your brand by being in the room. Yeah. And I think, one of our mantras at what we're trying to do at Centric is around sort of inspiring, empowering, supporting people to thrive. Now, that's a feeling, right? There's lots of thinking goes on there as well, but if people leave the room, whether it's the one-on-one coaching or the leadership work I do, feeling like that they know how to thrive, they've got that sense about what that looks like and feels like, then my brand will build.
Yeah.
And the consultancy is building on the basis of that value, of recommendation, of genuinely helping to change people's lives.
What have you found hardest about putting yourself out there?
The brand piece is the balance between humility for me is really, really important. But you have to put yourself out there. And I find that in the past, we've always talked about the fundraising's been about Seb or about other heart heroes like him. Campaigning's been campaigning for the heart unit and other things. It's never been about me. And so I find that difficult, which is why we've got Lau who works with us, who's able to support us to do that. In the other messaging, I think I'm getting more and more confident in how I break some of the myths and feel like I can provide an opinion, a thought in something, and not need to evidence 100 pieces of research. Just say, this is my feeling around resilience, authenticity, psychological safety, and just be a bit bolder.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm just being able to dial that up a little bit more.
And then it's the snowball effect of, it's working and do a bit more of that. So you touched there on sort of the charity stuff. So you have raised more than $500,000 for charity and you've got a number of trustee roles. How important has purpose been in shaping your reputation and the opportunities that have come your way as a result?
Yeah, purpose is everything for me. That's my compass point. The world will define whether or not that builds my reputation. For me, the purpose of what I want to do, how I want to show up in the world. Long before we set up Centric and the Thrive Guy existed, the situation we were put into with Seb and how that led us to fundraising was always purpose driven. It was always purpose driven and always about trying to have a positive impact in the world. There are enough people out there who are, it's all about them. And for me, my brand is important. I recognise that, but more important than my brand is the people we're trying to help. It was the same in fundraising, and I think we use storytelling and we use other ways to do that in a way that hopefully resonates with people and builds a brand that is aligned to my values and pushing us towards that purpose. So I think it's an interesting one when your business relies upon it.
Yep.
About how you get that balance right. There was a period of time where my predecessor, who was awesome, Sarah, essentially I could sense she was starting to push me into becoming the chair when she stepped down. Not a role that I ever aspired to have. I didn't think it was something I had the skills to do. And so when she finally persuaded me to do it, apart from being utterly terrified, we'd had some challenges as a charity. We were going into the pandemic, and I'm like, here's a 40-year-old charity that could fold on my watch. And so I practice what I preach to the people I work with, which is we are absolutely nailed onto our purpose.
Looking ahead, how would you like your personal brand to evolve over the next 5 years?
I think there's some interesting and exciting / terrifying things that I've got planned that I haven't quite put out into the world yet.
Can you share any?
I'm writing a book.
Ooh, that's exciting.
It is. Whether or not I'm ever brave enough to put it out into the world.
You've got to. We can help you with that.
I know you can, don't worry. It's more terrifying than the Thrive Guys channels, but I think there's bits like that. I think there are other bits around, often when you have a consultancy like ours, people talk about how you're going to scale it and scale it and scale it. And those are conversations that we need to have and make that very intentional decision whether that is what we want to do, and if we do, how we do it. So I think what we're doing, and we're doing work in both, some of the people I'm supporting in the NHS are literally saving lives or making decisions that are at a significant governmental level, or in the corporate world where we're changing how those organisations operate. Not us personally, but those conversations, the work we're doing. And so whether scaling the work we do as an organisation, but scaling the audience we can get it to, I think for me, and I don't quite know what that looks like yet, because I don't know whether I want to go down the route of employing loads of people. And so I think those are, if we continue to succeed as we are, we're going to have to work out what that looks like. And I want to be really clear on how, rather than just going with what everyone tells me I should do. Yeah. I think that's...
And trust your gut on some of that
totally.
Stuff as well.
Because a lot of people just talk about, you need investment, you want to scale it, how are you going to... and that feels like that's what they want to do.
Yeah.
And I'm quite clear on making sure that we're going to do what we want to do and how that will positively impact the world. Because if it means I'm sat in an office managing people all day and not going out and working with leaders, then there's going to be no joy for me.
I think it's really important to be clear on that. Just on your book, what is it that's making you nervous about putting it out there?
Oh, if I'm going to be really honest, judgment is a lot of things that I've been through and how I've kind of assimilated that, reflected on that. And so I think, much like when I first started doing the videos, I'm trying to smile on the videos, but it might be take 50. And it just because of self-doubt and feelings of imposter. So I think there's parts with the book is, I spent a year not doing anything with it.
So is it written?
It's close. It's close to being put in front of someone for them just to... I've spent basically 2 years writing it, a year of doing nothing.
There is no way you can just leave that. What a waste of your time and energy.
I wasn't even going to talk to you about this today, so I was kind of... But that's the thing, once you put things out, as I found with a lot of our challenges we did, certainly the most brutal ones, is once I put it out into the world, it kind of held my feet to the fire.
I think that when you get your book out there, I think you'll remember this conversation and you'll come back to me and say you were so right, because what will happen when that book is out there is it will create so many opportunities and interesting conversations, and I think you'll look back and think that was one of the best things that you've ever done for you in your business.
Yeah,
that's my prediction.
No, and you know far more about this than me, Sophie, and so I kind of bow to your expertise and your wisdom. I think it's what I want it. What I don't want it to be is preachy, a self-help guide. There are too many things. We've seen lots of things on social media very recently about people who are pretending they've got life sorted and I think it's toxic.
So I would imagine then that your book is none of those things, because that's already in your head. So what are you worried about?
I remember seeing so many people, and I can't remember, someone like Baz Luhrmann talking about when he's godlike in what he does, of putting his work out into the world, and in the early years of how difficult that was, because it was his, and then he put it out into the world, and you're suddenly putting it out for everyone else's judgment and assessment. And I think that I don't see myself as an author. I don't see, so there will be a sense of just at some point I'll just take the step. You're right, I've put too much into it.
And it'll create so many opportunities for you around the speaking side of things as well, and the way that you can leverage the book to get more of those and get better paid ones and.
Absolutely.
It's just the right thing for you to do.
Yeah.
So
The book, if and when it comes out, will stand there. If people, much like everything else in my work, if then people see value in that, I want the output is more speaking. Whereas I'm not doing... The goal of the book isn't to get more speaking gigs.
No.
The goal of the book is to, from a place of reflection, to essentially say, I think people struggle in life with the level of change. They struggle with coping with uncertainty and those major life-changing moments. I'm not an expert, but I think when we're able to be more reflective, we can help people to build a life where they're better able to cope with those things. If the book does that,
there you go.
Then I'm buzzing. If that leads to more speaking gigs, wonderful.
So then focus on that.
Yeah.
And if that book doesn't come out, how many hundreds or thousands of people have you taken that opportunity away from?
I feel like I'm getting a coaching session. I hadn't prepared for this.
You really are. Ivan, it's been great chatting to you. One final question. What's one piece of advice that you would give to someone whose strengths are obvious to everyone else except them?
Take a pause and just take a moment. I mean, can I give 2 bits of advice?
Of course.
I think we are locked in a state of mindless busyness, Sophie, and I think the power of a pause is possibly the most important thing we can do. In that pause, we either reflect on how awesome we are, or we pick up the phone, or we go and grab a coffee with that person who reminds us. I think if we don't just press pause for a moment, we're just on the hamster wheel. Yeah. And I think that the hamster wheel leads us to self-judgment, to comparison with other people, to I should have this, I'm not doing that. Just take a moment. And from that moment, from that space, I think it is liberating.
Yeah. Very wise words for us to end on. Ivan, if anyone watching or listening hasn't come across you before, where's the best place for them to find you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn as Ivan Hollingsworth, and then across all different social media channels under the Thrive Guy. And it'd be lovely to see people there.
Excellent. Well, we'll make that super easy for people to connect by putting those handles in the show notes. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you for listening. If you're serious about growing your profile, take our free profile assessment quiz to see where you're at right now and get hints and tips on how to improve your score. You'll find the link to the quiz in the show notes. If you've enjoyed the episode, it would be mint if you'd subscribe, like, and leave a review. See you next Monday.